Alright, today we're going to make a video of installing front pads and rotors, brake pads and rotors on our 97 Project Integra. They are provided to us by BuyAutoParts. They have supplied us with some nice looking parts here. I'm not familiar with this brand, but we're going to install them and test them and see how they go. Duralo, I think is how you say it. And we have some premium ceramic brake pads right here. Comes with shims. Look just like the factory brake pads. And then we have some cross drilled and slotted brake rotors with zinc coating, which is nice. So that will protect them from rusting, and they'll give us a nice sporty look. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on installing these parts. Before you get started on doing the front brake or rear brake installation, is you want to check the level on your brake fluid reservoir. You can see there's a minimum and a maximum, and sometimes what happens is the brake pads wear down and the fluid level drops accordingly, and people feel the need to top off the fluid, which actually is not necessary. You really shouldn't do it technically, because once you compress the piston, as you're going to see later in this video, I'm sorry, I should say the piston on the brake caliper, the fluid level is going to push right back up. So if the fluid level was sitting down at the minimum because the brake pads are low and somebody topped it off to the max, well, once you go and push the piston in, you're going to overflow. So definitely check and make sure that you're not maxed out on the fluid with low brake pads before you do the brake job. And if that is the case, if someone has topped it off, you can use a common turkey baster and you can open it up and suck some of the fluid out. Just be careful, because brake fluid eats into paint. If you get it on your engine compartment or any painted surface, wherever, it'll eat the paint and make it peel, so be careful. And so now we're going to get back to replacing the brakes. Alright, so we have our vehicle safely jacked up and placed on jack stands. Ignore the fact that the shock and spring are missing, because well, that's another part of the project, but that we're not dealing with today. Anyways, alright, so yeah, we're going to replace these crusty, rusty old rotors, put some new brake pads on here, and let's get started. So I'm going to be pulling the caliper off, and one thing is that the brake hose is bolted to the steering knuckle here. There's some 10 millimeter bolts that I'm going to take off just to get a little more room here. This way I can pull the caliper back and hang it up on the control arm out of the way. Alright. There are actually two more that are attached to the shock, which is missing. Sorry about that. So this is going to be slightly different from the scenario you're going to have just doing a normal brake replacement. Those are also held on with bolts that have a 10 millimeter head on them. Let's see. Oh, then, I'm not explaining myself. Going to use a 17 millimeter to knock the caliper brackets loose. There we go. Using a 1/2 inch ratchet, because these are torqued on pretty good, and after all the heat and time sitting there, they can be a little bit difficult to break loose, so a little extra leverage is definitely helpful. Let's see, the other thing, so I want to get the There we go. The 12mm bolts loose on the caliper to the mounting bracket. Oh, somebody's got these in here tight. I hope they didn't strip them. Then we'll be screwed. Oh man. Okay, well, we're not screwed. Thankfully. See how the other one goes. Okay, not so bad. So, taking these bolts out, setting them aside. They don't look rusty, that's good. We'll slide the caliper out, set that aside, out of the way for now. And let's see, I'm going to take out the old brake pads, which these aren't too bad, but we're going to do this little upgrade, so no need for these anymore. And then take out the bolts that hold the bracket on. A little corroded. Luckily not bad, since we're in California, I guess. I don't think we don't have the rust issues, but anyways. And then you also got to make sure that your hardware is intact. Sometimes these pieces can break. Looks like we're okay there. Some brake pad kits come with new pieces, but they're usually too expensive. Usually overpriced. Alright, so anyways, on to the next thing. So we need to get this rotor off of here. And let's see, there's a couple ways of going about it. Oh, it looks like nobody tightened it to begin with. Huh. Funny thing. Those screws are already loose. But yeah, these screws can be stuck in there pretty good. And one way you can get them out is by using one of these impact screwdrivers, where it actually, you can beat on it, boom, and it'll knock the screw loose. Or another option, you can maybe use a little electric impact and boom. That actually works pretty well too. I like that method. Impact screwdriver, I don't know, it's a little rough, seems to kind of mar up the screws sometimes. Okay, anyways, so rotor's off. Time to pull out the brand new parts from BuyAutoParts and install them. Alright, so one thing you do need to check, I don't know if you can read that, I think so. Well, anyways, see, with drilled and slotted rotors, they are directional, and so they have to go on one particular side of the vehicle. BuyAutoParts has actually labeled them front driver side, so this is the correct one for the corner we're working on. And one thing about these is they are zinc plated, so that resists rust on the metal. And usually non-plated rotors are covered in some oily coating, and you really have to clean that off. Make sure that you're gonna get friction, the proper friction with your braking parts. But anyways, these are plated, so they don't seem to actually have anything on them. But just for good measure, I'm gonna go ahead and clean them with some acetone anyways, because I don't want any kind of oily residue or anything on there. And I'm just gonna do that on the friction surface on both sides of the rotors. Just a quick and easy thing. You could probably also use brake cleaner. That stuff works too. You can actually see it doesn't look dirty. It doesn't look like anything really came off. So next step is we're gonna mount these up and get everything put back together. One thing you want to do check too is that your hub could have a fair amount of rust on here, You can always use a wire brush to clean up excessive rust buildup. These hubs are in pretty good shape, so not going to do that this time around. Alright, so line up your rotors so that the retaining screw holes line up. And then we're going to go ahead and put the screws back in. Oop. Alright, let's use my little electric driver to tighten them down. Alright. Then, another thing we have to do to prep for putting these brakes back together is we got to push the piston back into the caliper. And I have a tool for that. Let's see, you get a better view there? Okay. Alright, so I've gotten my piston compressing tool. And one thing you can do to make sure that you can get that piston nice and flush, so you can see basically what the tool does is it sets in there like that. The plate sets in there like it's a brake pad. And then you can take the old brake pad and just crank on it, and basically once it stops, the piston is flush, or it should be, and there we go. Then that caliper is going to be ready to put back in. Set our tool aside. Set the caliper back aside again, because first we need to get our caliper mounting bracket back on. One thing we're going to do before we put the bracket on is we're going to lube the sliding pins. So we're going to take them out. Oh, that one wasn't quite snapped into the boot. Whatever. We'll put that back properly when we put it back together. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to lube the sliding pins with some silicone paste, which, as you can see, says for brake calipers right there. So I'm going to pull the pins out. I'm just going to clean off all the old funky looking grease or lubricant, and then put a nice little coating on there. Alright, that should be good. So we'll slide it back in and make sure that the boot goes up and over the lip on there. This one doesn't want to go. Probably why somebody didn't do it before. Oh, wait. Oh. Okay, there we go. Alright, so that one's in place. Then we'll slide the other one out. Do the same thing, clean off the old goo, put on some new goo. Doesn't hurt to put some all the way up here. Oop. Help that boot slide up over there. Okay, then we'll put that back. Make sure the boot's on. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so then we're going to go ahead and put our bracket on and put everything back together. We're going to go ahead and mount the caliper bracket back on. One thing I like to do, especially when I see a little corrosion on there, I like to put a little anti-seize lubricant on there so this bolt doesn't seize up in there the next time around, and then you're in trouble. Alright, so let's line it up. And do the other one, same thing. Put a little anti-seize. And okay. Then I'm just gonna tighten these down. Okay, whoops. All right, so then gonna put the outer pad in. Here we go. And then typically the one with the little feeler sensor noise maker is gonna go on the inside. And if you notice, if you take a look, one has the feeler in the right side, one's got on the left side. The way these work, the rotor turns and it's gonna start touching and drag on this and make noise. So it should be dragging on it, pulling it away. And so that means that this one here with the little feeler on the right side should go on the driver's side. There we go. And then we will grab our caliper here, put that into place, and line up our sliding pins. There we go. And get our mounting bolts in. Also, make sure you don't have your brake line all twisted up. If it's in the way it should be, that little support bracket should just sit right back in there on the knuckle, and you can put the little mounting bolts on that. And then if you have removed them, don't forget to put the two mounting bolts that connect to the shock as well, which is pretty straightforward. And then tighten these down. All right. On these ones, I like to double check and make sure they're snug down with the ratchet. That's a small impact driver with not a lot of torque, so I'm not going to rely on that. All right, so now we've got everything mounted up here, and we'll just mount our wheel, lower the vehicle, pump the brakes to make sure that the piston is pushed up against the brake pads, and we should be good to go.